Oh dear, trying again. So if you're watching this on replay, you might want to check in the comments for the timestamp to where to skip to, because the first few minutes is always a bit slow. There's no people here, and yeah, I always feel like it when there's no one here, I've got nothing to say. I at least want to wait for someone. So yeah, as I say, if you're on the replay, just check for the timestamp in the comments. Otherwise, I'm going to wait for people to start rolling in before I really get into business. Now, I bit of a bonehead. I set up the stream. Unfortunately, the hunger. I can hear you now. Good. So yeah, I've just come off another stream that didn't work because I didn't set the sound up properly. Because sound engineer. It's not part of my. I just I don't know about sound. Okay, and the other thing is that I scheduled the live stream in private. I didn't set it to public. This is what happens when you when you're inept. And I am pretty much inept in everything apart from what I'm good at, which is the music stuff. So that's my excuse. I'm so good at music that I'm rubbish at everything else. That's my excuse. Just joking, of course. Right. So we've got two people. Well, while you're here and you're the only two, you might as well hit me. Give me some questions or something. Give me something to talk about. Give me something to do. Because I haven't planned anything. Well, I will get into things of announcements and stuff. But until then, let's just go. So, Jamie, I saw you posted something on Twitter, basically about being disturbed by sound in your home. I hope you don't mind me sharing that on the stream, but it was live on Twitter, so whatever. And you were asking, all right, I'm going to get to that synthpad question in a moment. And you were asking about essentially shielding yourself from the sound. And I recommended Rockwool, which is what's in this studio. If you see those white blocks, well, they might not even look white, I don't know, but they are white. They're packed full of Rockwool. And these big things at the back, which probably look grey, but they're blue. They're like a deep navy denim kind of blue. I've got those in each corner. Those are bass traps, and yeah, they're just stuffed full of Rockwool. It's magical stuff. It really, really helps. Okay, how to compress synth pads. Now, are you asking that as a joke because of our little interplay in the community tab? Or are you asking because you genuinely want to know what my approach is? Because I'm ready to dive in and jump in on that if that's really where you want to go. In fact, I should just load up Cubase so I've got something to mess with. Genuinely want to know. Okay. I can't I remember parts of our interaction. So unfortunately, the hunger, we were talking about parallel compression, we were talking about multi-band compression, we were talking about upwards compression in the community tab on YouTube, on my YouTube channel. And I don't remember the very, very specifics or how we left it, but he was skeptical about my suggestion that you should use multi-band compression for compressing pads. And I was skeptical of his suggestion that he'd heard someone had said that he should use parallel compression for pads. So let's look at that. I'm not sharing my screen or anything. So, oh my goodness, I've misgendered someone. Well, forgive me for being presumptuous, but my stats, when I've looked at my stats, says 100% male most of the time. I sometimes get like 97% male, 98% male. Do forgive me. I'm so sorry for that. Okay, we've got Brad. Hello. We're about to talk about pad compression. Just setting something up here. So what kind of music are you doing? What kind of pads are we talking about? Because I suppose pads is probably one of the least descriptive terms, is one of the least specific terms, because it could mean a whole heap of different things. I mean, sometimes An electric piano could be pads. Sometimes we're talking about strings. Obviously, a lot of the time we're talking about synths that play the role of strings, like a string section. So, if you could refine that for me, please. The music production scene is unfortunately so male dominated that YouTube algorithms assume anyone interested in the subject is automatically male. Look, I don't. Listen, I've had plenty of, let's say, non males here working on music. There's obviously plenty of non male YouTube, what would you call it, music production gurus, and there's plenty of non male DJs in the space, and obviously artists. So yeah, I don't, I'm not like that, but I don't know. For some reason, I just had an image of you in my head. I suppose for everyone who I see commenting regularly, I kind of build up a mental picture of that person in my mind quite arbitrarily. And for some reason, yeah, you ended up being a dude. No offense, nothing personal. Um, you know, it's the idea like um, it it's completely random what the picture that comes up in your head, but then after a while, you don't know whether that picture is a real picture. Did I look at this person's channel at some point and see them? Is that why I've got this image in my head, or is it just something completely random? I don't know. So sometimes I might make that mistake. Don't mean any offense. Trance pads, side trance pads, space ambient pads. Well, of course, of course. Okay. I'm going to pull up then. What am I going to pull up? Omnisphere. You're going to moan at me about updates because I don't update it that often. Let's have a look. Yeah, get updates. No, thanks. Not right now. Do you have Omnisphere? Is there a particular patch that you'd like me to have a look at? Yeah, stuff soaked in reverb. I get it. I get it. Let me find something in here. It's randomized. I'll go through a few different ones. It's not really trancey style, is it? Let's have a look around. Yeah, I think that's the kind of thing. See what the comments say. Chat. Like more than mining, anyway. Stuff that's absolutely so reverb. All right, don't worry about the specifics. Let's just get into this. So, I'll just chuck down a little chord progression or something. I'm going to be old school. Go 1-3-8. So I guess something like that would fit depending on the subgenre. Tidy up that MIDI a little bit. Done. And so, yeah, my general feeling here, there's two things that's difficult with these kinds of pads. Oh, I'm going to turn off that click, the metronome. The two things that is difficult are the EQ and the compression, single band compression anyway, because the waveform for that will be all over the place. You probably could guess, but I'm looking at the waveform now, and yeah, it's all over the place. Yeah, it's just ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. Actually, it's not as bad as some pads because I think there's an element of distortion in that pad. But either way, let's ignore that. It presents the same issues as normal. And with EQ again, it's like because the frequencies are so, I want to say inconsistent. That's not quite the right word, but you know what I mean. The frequencies are so non-solid. Yeah, inconsistent. What word would you use for that? You know what I'm talking about anyway. Because the pads are so kind of wavy and movie and floaty, you want to kind of clamp down, but compression kind of exasperates that situation because the loudest part of the sound is what's triggering a single band compressor, as we know. But the loudest part of the sound is going to shift up and down the frequency spectrum depending on what part of that passage is playing back and kind of the interaction between the oscillators and all of that kind of thing. Lots of peaks and resonances that are unpredictable. Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. So if you use a single band compressor, it just makes it worse, basically, even if it's in parallel. Because if you're using a single band compressor, even not in parallel, you're exasperating the issue of different frequencies driving the level at different times. And so doing that, but slightly less, isn't the solution. I'm trying to think of a metaphor, but I hope you understand what I'm getting at here. It's like if you have a solution to an issue, but that solution has a problem, well, that problem scales with how much you depend on that solution. So depending on the solution less in order to have less of the problem that comes with the solution is not the solution. Ideally, what we want is a solution that doesn't rely on that, doesn't come with that problem. Now, of course, lots of problems come with lots of solutions come with their own problems. That's normal. That's part of engineering and problem solving. That's just part and parcel. And actually, this is where I think multi-band compression is strongest. It's one of the best applications for multi-band compression. Now, I don't consider multi-band compression to be a type of compression exactly. It's like it's a hybrid effect that's part dynamics and part frequency domain. And that's a very important distinction because I think a lot of people think of a multi-band compressor as being a type of compressor. And I suppose from one kind of technical perspective, it is. But in terms of usage and in terms of where it's going to be applied, I think they're different enough. They have different strengths and weaknesses that it makes much more sense to treat multi-band compression as a category of its own. Also, because the way that you would configure it is very different. Like if you think about how you would go about setting up a compressor, I suppose one of the most important things is to set an appropriate threshold because that's obviously the level beyond which the compressor starts to act. But with multi-band compression, you have as many thresholds as you have bands. That gets complicated. That gets messy. See, I don't like using processes where it's a jigsaw puzzle. It's a maze to get to the solution. And actually, I find when I use multi-band compression, oftentimes I can use that just as quick as using a single band compressor, even if there's 5, 6, 7, 8 bands. And the way that I approach that, which I mentioned in one of the community posts, is to treat all the bands as equal to begin with. So that's what I'm going to do here. I have a multi-band compression ensemble inside MXXX, which is The Melder plugin that is, it's like the Frankenstein plugin. You build your own ensembles of effects. And so what it allows you to do is you have like these modules, and the modules are based on the plugins that you've bought from them already, or I think you can use free ones actually. I'm not sure about that. But so you've got like compression, EQ, and you've got different types of compressors, different types of EQ, and all the rest of it. And then you stitch those modules together to build something. And I've built something that's basically 6 bands of compression and a tilt filter, and then a single band compressor afterwards, which I don't usually use. So what I do is I'll take the tilt filter and I'll use that to re-level top and bottom. So if I want more highs, I'm tilting that way, and if I want more lows, I'm tilting that way. That doesn't work on all sounds. It doesn't work in all cases, but it works enough of the time that I like to keep it there. I certainly would expect that to work with a synth pad. This pad in particular sounds dark to me, I guess, because you're going through my microphone. You're not going to hear really the full, the tonality of it. In fact, yeah, I'm a little bit bothered by this. I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to do stuff and be like, yeah, doesn't that sound great? And it might actually sound worse at your end. Just to warn you, that's normal. That's just because it's coming through the speakers and going into the mic. Something's clipping. Let me just watch out for that. Yeah, my level's just a bit too high. Okay, I'll pull that down. Cannot stand the sound of that clipping. It still sounds like it's clipping, even though it's not actually clipping. So I've got to think about that. Why is that? Is it clipping internally, maybe? Or it might just be artifacts that are inside the sound, because I think the sound itself has distortion inside it, and that is now coming out, because multi-band compression, as I've mentioned in a community post, it brings out the detail and the nuance in whatever sound there is. Because if there's like a little bit of detail, say in the high frequencies, then the lower volume parts of those high frequencies are brought up closer to the highs, and then the louder high frequency parts are brought down relative to the low. So they're more even with each other. So it's like, well, yeah, less dynamic. So it basically brings all the nuance to the forefront, and it does that per band. Now I have 6 bands. I haven't changed the crossovers, but I'm hearing like nasty crackling sounds in the high frequencies. Yeah, I tried reducing the input gain and it didn't help. So I think it's actually just kind of part of the sound. But you know what? I'm going to stick with this. I'm just going to roll with it, even though it's imperfect, because yeah, it's a good example of what would I do with an imperfect sound. Yeah, I can hear, now that I've bypassed that multi-band compressor, I can hear those nuances in the patch. I wouldn't have made the patch that way personally. I don't actually like those kind of high sounds. Let me read read the chat. Saw someone claim that in the analog realm, EQs and compressors kind of double act as each other. Yeah, that's not just in the analog realm. That's true in the digital domain as well. It's exactly the same. Because if you have a sound that's louder when it's lower and quieter when it's higher, then you can affect the loudness and quietness relative parts with EQ. So for example, a kick drum. Many kick drums kind of have a main kind of portion. And if the sound is, say, I don't know if you're seeing me this way or this way, because I'm looking at myself. It's like mirror image. I'm sure you're not seeing the mirror image, so you must be seeing it the other way. Because what I would normally do is do it this way. I hope that looks right to you. So this is a kick drum. Kick drums go this way, right? No, you know what I mean. Anyway, just humor me. I'll watch this on replay and I'll figure it out. So if you've got a kick drum that's like this kind of a shape, so it's like you've got your peak at the front, and then it tails off afterwards. The also we know that the high frequencies are at the start and it gets lower towards the end. That means if we boost the low frequencies, it's like compression. If we cut the high frequencies, it's like compression as well. So that works that way. Also, if you were to do it the other way, if you were to use a compressor, using a compressor on this would effectively reduce the high frequencies and boost the low frequencies. So yes, there is always an interaction, and that's true. It's kind of extra true with multi-band compression because that's happening at each band, and so you get this. Well, I really love it. This lovely smoothing effect with multi-band compression, where each of the bands becomes, I want to say normalized, but that's really technically very wrong. It's really not the right term at all. But each band is made to be more consistent, and so each kind of the peaks and troughs of each band are more consistent with each other, and the frequencies of each band are more consistent with each other. Understand what I'm saying? So if you have, say it's 3 bands, and your middle band spans from, I don't know, 200 hertz to 2 kilohertz. So 200 hertz to 2 kilohertz is quite a range. But what I'm saying is, with a multi-band compressor, the stuff that's happening at 2 kilohertz and the stuff that's happening at 200 hertz, I mean, I don't know what the source sound would be for that, maybe a drum loop or something. It's going to make those more even. So it's going to make, as long as they're not kind of playing at the same time, it's going to make the 200 hertz stuff more even with the 2000 hertz stuff. And it's doing that all within one band. And then if you extrapolate that across multiple bands, and the effect that you get of each band being more similar with each other, you get a smoothing of the frequency spectrum. You can't do that with EQ. It says the chat is disconnected. I've never seen that before. Okay, successfully reconnected. Goodness me. And I'm running out of time as well. This is not good. Oh dear. So this is the thing with multi-band compressions. It smooths everything. I wish I hadn't picked that pad now, because I could have actually shown some good examples. I feel a bit of like a time pressure. Let me read the chat. So lots of peaks, blah, blah, blah. Pad is pretty dark. More used to pads with more sparkle. Okay. Camera froze. Oh, I don't know what's up with that. Looks like it didn't like your wild arm movements. Are my arm movements that wild? A lot of kick drum samples I like the sound of have a volume dip between the transient and the body. Yeah. I call that a neck. I would put that on kick drums intentionally because it helps separate the attack transient from the body. That neck, you get like a fish kind of a shape, if you see what I mean. Yeah, there used to be that compressor plugin, Blockfish. That used to be quite popular. It's not anymore, but there used to be a really popular compressor plugin called Blockfish, and I think, I don't know, for some, I've got that association in my head that the reason why is because you could create that shape. Maybe it had nothing to do with that, but I used to use it to create that shape where, yeah, it's like a kind of a stick, then a gap, and then a big block after that. I'm trying to do it with my hands, but that might mess up the stream. So what's going on with this chat? So I know we have more people than one person, 3 people, but I'm mainly seeing one person chat here. This is what happens when you set the chat live and then set it to public, the stream to private, I mean, and then mess up the first stream by not having the microphone on. I mean, just inept. So I'm looking to, I'm basically at a turning point now. I'm launching this month my community. Well, it's going to be like a round 1, so it's not going to be open to absolutely everybody. I'm going to be quite picky about who I let in, and then the plan is to use that to kind of kickstart the next chapter for what I'm doing on YouTube, because I really want to be putting out more stuff on YouTube. I don't like to think of myself as a YouTuber. I've said that a few times in the community post, because I think that the people who do that, not all of them, but some of them, when they think of themselves as YouTubers, and especially when they think of themselves as YouTubers first, it's like then they feel like they need to behave like a YouTuber and do what a YouTuber does. And quite frankly, I think what a YouTuber does, a lot of things that are commonplace for YouTubers, doesn't gel well with me. I'm just not that kind of person. I don't want to be doing some of the things that are commonplace on the YouTube scene, and I want to do things that are totally uncommon, and that probably won't be favored by YouTube kind of at large. So this is why I don't. This is why I say I'm not a YouTuber. I don't consider myself a YouTuber, but I am intending to pump out a very heavy amount of YouTube videos. And I don't like calling it content either. Blech, content. That sounds so dry. It sounds like a factory product. It sounds like someone's sat there turning a handle and this content's just coming out. Nah. That's not what I'm about at all. I want to help people. This is the thing. I actually want to help people. Because you know what? I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. When I was young and stupid, more young and more stupid, I just desperately wanted to learn to make my own music. And I didn't have the equipment, I didn't have the knowledge, I didn't have the skills, I had nothing. But I just had this burning desire, really burning desire. And I mean, I was about music a lot as a child. My parents are both music lovers. My dad is a session guitarist, so I actually got to sit in on bands performing and that kind of thing. So I had a very kind of musical environment and a musical upbringing. So there was that. But when it came down to it, I mean, I dabbled with a few different instruments, but I never really got super proficient on any of them. And I certainly didn't have the technology. And as soon as I got a few bits and pieces, I thought, right, this is it. I'm going to start making this rave music. It's going to be fantastic. And I was gutted. It was hard. Like, I expected it to be maybe not easy, but easier than it was. It was really difficult. And I thought, well, maybe practice. I'll just keep practicing. And I just wasn't getting better, or not measurably better. And it bugged me. It felt like a real anticlimax because I had really wanted to do it for years. I'd been desperate to do it for years. It'd been my most burning desire was to make music. And when I finally had that opportunity and what came out of the speakers was awful, I was like, no, I can't accept that. That's not happening. No, this is not how this was supposed to happen. So yeah, I was just on this mad quest to get good and to find information. I was going to what do you call them, like trade shows. They used to have all these different trade shows that aren't running anymore. I know we've got NARM now, and we've got the WMC and all of that stuff. But back in the day, there were all kinds of different ones. There was like a guitarist one, there was a keyboardist one. Then there was this time when they brought them all together. They had like a DJ one mixed with the guitar one, mixed with the keyboard one. I can't remember what the other one was. There was like four. And those were cool. You used to have like Yamaha and Steinberg and Roland, and all those companies had stands. And then there were the smaller companies, the boutique companies, Zero G. I remember Zero G used to have these little stalls. They were like jukeboxes where you could put the headphones on and listen to the latest sample CDs and skip through the CD and listen to the different tracks and hear what the samples were just in these headphones that they had attached. And then that's where I bought my first sample CDs in the 90s. And I was just absolutely hell-bent. I had to learn. And the longer I was on this quest, the more I realized it's like, not only is it difficult to learn, it's like there's no one really knows and is willing to share. Either they know and they're not willing to share, they're like zipping their mouths, or they're willing to share but they're unable. Like they don't know how to phrase it, how to convey what it is they do. They just say, oh yeah, I just step one, get in the zone. Step two, bash out a riff. It's like, yeah, that's not teaching though, is it? That's just kind of giving a bird's eye view of what you do. But I suppose enough of their process happens unconsciously that they're unable to kind of break that down and to give it in steps that would be useful for somebody else. And then there are the people who are all too happy to be the signpost and the guru and the mentor and the teacher, and they will dish out advice till the cows come home. But sometimes that advice is more harmful than helpful. That's the truth. And so I felt bitter, honestly, when I was, early on trying to learn this stuff. I felt bitter. I felt kind of angry. Like, I'm willing to pay. I'm willing to work. I'll work hard, and I'll read every book. I did. I read loads of books. I still got like some funny old books. I don't know if I've got any to hand. Well, I've got some really funny old books where they've got screen grabs of black and white Acorn and Atari screens and things like that. And yeah, I did like courses and seminars and all kinds of training and stuff. And it was all just, I don't want to be ultra negative and dismissive, but put it this way, it fell short of my hopes and my expectations. And then since learning what I've learned, which basically I did by giving up on trusting people, I basically learned what I learned by saying, "Do you know what? I've heard what you lot have got to say. I'm going to find out the hard way. I'm just going to test. I'm just going to think about this from the moment I wake up, and I wake up early, to the moment I go to bed. And even in my dreams, even if I wake up in the middle of the night, I'm thinking about how can I compress that kick drum to make it more punchy. I'm thinking about all that stuff just constantly. And I have been since I was a kid. And yeah, it's been the scenic route. So, there's advantages to that, but goodness me, it's been difficult. And I'm not less bitter about it, actually. And I don't get bitter about things much, but this I'm bitter about because I've come all the way up to the top of the mountain. Does that sound arrogant? You know what I mean? Like I've got to a point where I'm competent and I'm looking down and I'm thinking, I didn't need to go that way. There was so many easier ways up this mountain. There was a ladder and no one told me, either because they didn't know or they didn't want me to find out or they didn't want everyone to know. And even like I see some of these YouTubers and they will give you a piece of advice and then say, oh, and the other half is in the Patreon, or they'll say this is as much as I'm willing to share publicly. Well, what's that all about? I don't understand that mentality. It's not me. It's not me. I'm very kind of open. I like just sharing everything with everyone, but it has to be done kind of in a sensible way. I mean, I don't want to be. I get a lot of emails from people where they're asking me all kinds of questions, which sometimes is just a bit too much. You know what I mean? I can't be helping people for free at my own expense. People that I don't even know, never even met. I don't owe them anything, but they're emailing me, asking me all kinds of questions, listen to my album and blah, blah, blah. And, I engage with it as much as I can, but I see YouTube as an opportunity to really expand that. And I feel like there's a finite body of knowledge. I suppose it's finite, but it's growing. But anyway, there's a finite body of knowledge that I've developed that is like the essentials that I rely on that everybody should know. And I feel really strongly in my heart that I need to get that out for free for everybody. Which, yeah, you might be wondering, well, then why are you starting a private community? And it's not for that reason. It's not so that I can lock information behind a paywall. At least not that kind of information. Like I said, there's a particular body of information that I feel should just be available to everyone. And part of my reluctance in sharing it, some of it so far, has been the backlash that I get as soon as I go against the dogma. When I say, so for example, in this conversation about compression and EQ. Unfortunately, the Hunger said someone claimed that in the analog domain, EQs and compressors kind of act. They double act as each other. So compression acts as EQ and EQ acts as compression. And that is true, which I said, and it's true in the digital domain as well. But it's the kind of thing that sometimes if you say that to someone, well, you know you can do compression with an EQ. They're like, shut up. No, you can't. What are you talking about? You don't know anything. It's like, it's not because I don't know anything that I'm saying you can do compression with EQ. It's because I've done and I do compression with EQ all the time. It's really quite simple, but yeah, people are very skeptical and untrusting, and yeah, I kind of understand that. They have good reason to be skeptical, and I suppose trust is hard won, but I do intend to win it, to do that on YouTube. I think YouTube especially is a good platform. It's a nice user experience. I like, the transcripts and the watching at double speed and the comments and the likes and everything. I think like overall, I have my complaints about YouTube. Everybody does, but overall, I do think it's the best platform. So I am looking to make that happen, to get a whole heap of information out on YouTube. And yeah, it's going to annoy some people because I'm going to be saying, like, you know what? Somebody today, it was one of these emails, like what I was talking about. Somebody emailed me. The email didn't come today, but I replied to the email today. He emailed me asking me, what do I think about this particular stereo imaging plugin? And I'm not going to name the company. I'm not going to name the product. If you guess it, so what? I don't care. But look, it's a stereo widening plugin, quite a popular one. Actually, it's free. So like you think, well, it's free. Who cares? But it's rubbish. Basically, he asked my opinion on it. I said, no, it's no good. It's stupid. And the reason is, I went onto the website of the company where you download this plugin from, this Stereoizer, and I listened to the audio demos, and I could hear artifacts all over the place. And the whole claim of it is that it does stereo widening without artifacts. And you know what annoyed me is on the same page they've got, like the circle boxes of the gurus and the influencers and the YouTubers saying, yeah, this is a great plugin. It's the best way to stereo. It's like, man, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. It does annoy me because this is the crap that I had to break through in order to get competent. I'll just say competent. That's simple. You know what? Sometimes I worry about this, that how I phrase things when I'm talking about my level of skill. And I think that my paradigm there, my whole thought about skill and how that works is so different from the norm that I think if I say things in a way that's not careful, then people are going to see that through the lens of the normal way of thinking about those things. And that's basically the wrong context for the words. And it's easy for misunderstandings to happen. But I'll say this: I'm very happy with my skill set. I've worked harder than anyone I've ever known or met in order to gain that skill set. So I feel like I've earned it. I was absolutely rubbish to start with, and I've been at this since 1994. So yeah, almost 30 years of very, very, very hardcore, very, very intense obsession, single-minded, single focus obsession. So, I mean, anyone who put in that amount of work, that amount of effort, would be happy with their level of competence, I think. I don't think I'm being arrogant by saying that. It didn't come naturally. It's been an embarrassing load of work. And I think, actually, I'm a slow learner, and that's part of it. It's part of it. And when I say I'm a slow learner, I actually learn extremely fast now within this realm because I've built up so much momentum. It's like a snowball that's rolling down the hill. It just keeps picking up snow, and the bigger it gets, the more snow it picks up as it goes. That's how learning is. Like the more you learn, the easier it is to integrate new learnings because you have a strong framework to integrate those learnings into. But yeah, it was really hard to get that snowball started in the first place for me. And one of the things I find frustrating is that when I talk to friends about music production and they ask me questions, or I'm teaching them, mentoring them, they everybody learns faster than I did, and it bugs me. And I'd love to say, oh, it's because I'm such a great teacher, but no, nah. I'm telling them the same information that helped me make the breakthroughs, and they're making the breakthroughs far faster than I did. Maybe it's the age as well, because I was just a kid when I was learning that stuff. But anyway, excuses aside, I find that I am actually a slow learner in most realms of life, just in general. Like I'm nearly 40, and I've only just learned to cook to a barely competent level. And I tried before, and I asked people for help. Like I asked my parents to show me things, like how do you cook rice and how do you use a frying pan, and it just I am very slow, but I'm a thorough learner though. I'll say that I'm not stupid. Like once I've picked something up, then I'm good with it. But it just takes a little bit longer to sink in the first place. Okay, let me read that. That's how I feel about consume media. Yeah, nasty. I also think a lot of pros, at least nowadays, who don't want to show the process because it reveal they mostly rely on pirated plugins. Yeah, I think there's an element of that. I don't, by the way. I've got no pirated plugins. Look, I'm a big stickler for integrity, not to be like virtue signaling or whatever. I don't care what you guys think, and I'm not judging you for your decisions. But for me, for myself, I need to know that I'm doing things according to my own values. I think it's less that people are skeptical in general, and more that they're only willing to trust musicians with the right credentials. Yeah, but that's stupid. It's really stupid. Really stupid. Let me think about that. Yeah, but it depends how. Yeah, you know what? I think no, it's not stupid. It's not stupid. It's a little bit It can be misguided. Not necessarily misguided. Because the thing is, I think if someone has produced something and you genuinely love the sound of it, then you should listen to what they have to say. And if someone has produced a load of music and you don't like the sound of it, then take that into consideration. I think that's fair. That's logical. But if you're going based on, how big of an artist are they and that kind of thing, that's definitely not the one. That's definitely not the one. I'm thinking actually I've got a particular example in my mind at the moment. There was a producer who was considered to be like the Don of all Dons, the champion, the master, the producer's producer, and all of this. And everybody loved him and looked up to him and lauded him with praise. And he put out a tweet saying, the tweet said something like, "Oh, if you do XYZ technique, then stop making music." And immediately there was another big producer who replied to that tweet saying, "That's the technique that I use." And he was scandalized. He was shocked. He was like, how is that possible? Your music sounds so good. And it's like, yeah, well, maybe you don't have all the answers. Maybe you should open your mind a little bit, because there's different ways to skin cats, and there's different cats to skin. Maybe your method of skinning a tabby isn't quite the same method to skin a panther. Anyway, I'm gonna have to jump. This was just supposed to be a quick catch up, and I suppose the main message is that I'm gonna be jumping back into things. It's really the turning point for me now. I'm going to be launching this membership service this month for a limited number of people. I'll be sharing details about that shortly. And it's also the turning point for my activities on YouTube, because I will be back to posting videos, actual videos, not just community tab posts, which getting a bit tedious, to be honest. I much prefer to do videos. Videos is more fun, isn't it? I like to have audio examples. It's good to have audio examples. In fact, I think it's very important to have audio examples. And going back to that whole thing about people being skeptical, I think it's important for anyone demonstrating something to show what the result is. Yeah, again, another example that pops to my mind. There was a big producer who recently did a video for somebody else's channel, blah, blah, blah. It was a production tutorial, essentially. And I was watching it for the first few minutes and I'm like, hang on a minute. He's not going to show us the end result until the end. Why do people do this? Like, how do we know it's going to sound good if we have to wait until the end? I want to know what it's going to sound like so that I understand the context of the words that you're saying on the way to getting to that point. I don't want to be waiting 15 minutes or 10 minutes or even 8 minutes, whatever it is, to get to the sound to decide whether or not I want to watch the tutorial. I don't want to be skipping through the tutorial and all of that. Yeah, you got a big name, but that doesn't mean you know how to make every sound perfectly. It doesn't mean you're worth listening to on this particular point. So yeah, I feel very strongly about that. I have like my kind of idea of etiquette for how those videos should be, how they should be produced. And I'm just going to stick to my guns and do it my way and ignore what everybody else is doing. And to a degree, ignore the majority of the audience, in the sense of, I think, a lot of people talk about the low attention span of people these days and that kind of thing. I don't care. I know who it is that I want to reach, and that's people who are willing to put in a bit of effort and who do have some patience, and I will serve those people the best I can for free. Finally, what's my final point? Yeah, I need to demonstrate, because that's something I haven't done a lot of on YouTube, is actually demonstrate my skills. People don't realize. So that's another reason why I feel like a bit iffy about talking about my skills and how happy I am with them out of context, because people might think, hang on a minute, who are you? What are you talking about? And as I understand it, it's understandable, but no, I've kept my skills a secret mostly. I could do some wild things that nobody realizes. Even the people who do have a bit of an idea, they don't really realize. I have every skill. I mean, there's definitely skills other people have that I don't, for sure. I'm not like that. But yeah, I do need to do some flexing at some point, just to kind of establish myself, because I don't really have another way to do it other than to show, look, this is what I can produce. If you want your music to sound more like this, then pay attention. Okay, seeing so many people in the EDM with such inflated egos kind of discouraged me from putting out my music on the internet. Out of fear, I'd also become that person in the EDM scene. Yeah, but look, stay true to yourself. That's it. Stay true to yourself. The most successful artists are the ones that stay true to themselves anyway. They always were. They always have been. Same thing. You know what I mean? Somebody in the community tab, I think, or on one of the comments on one of the videos, maybe. Yeah, actually, it might have been. Was it you? You said about. Somebody said, I don't remember who it was, but somebody was saying, what if the record label doesn't accept your demo because they think that your bass is too wide? Stick to your guns. That's it. That's the answer to so many problems. Stick to your guns. Stick to your principles. You do you, and don't let anybody tell you any different. If a record label tells me I don't like something, they don't like something about my work, if I agree, I'm grateful. That's great. Let's make the changes. If I disagree, okay, pause. Let me have a think. Let me consider it. Let me be sure before I push back. Because I'm going to push back otherwise. If I'm sure I'm right and they're wrong, there will not be compromise. No way. What's the point? What's the point of being an artist if you have to compromise? Explain that to me. You might as well not be an artist. There's so many other opportunities where people compromise in their daily life. Seems to me like if you're going to be an artist of any description, I even mean mix engineer, you know, any type of artist, if you're going to be an artist, there's zero point in compromising. To me, that's totally counterintuitive, counterproductive. I mean, it goes against all the things that would draw me to being an artist in the first place. For what? For a record label? What have they got that's so important that I need? Opportunity, money, platform, all that stuff. None of that is more important than artistic integrity. Never will be. Never could be. See, my decisions personally are made for what's in my best interest in terms of how do I feel about myself, and you know, if what I remember this contract someone put in front of me one time, and it was like they wanted me to sign this deal where they get to use music that I've produced, and I have no say to prevent it from being used in a context that I don't like. So, for example, they might use that to sell atomic weaponry to a third world nation, for example. I don't know. Or they might use it to promote some social thing that I don't agree with. You know what I mean? Like, I can't think of an example that, but maybe pro-gun or something. And I wouldn't be able to say, no, I don't want my thing to be used for a pro-gun. That's just an example. I wouldn't necessarily say no to that. I don't know. But I said, no, I'm not signing that. And they said, well, you don't understand. You can't have this deal unless you sign this. I said, well, guess what? Bye.